Okay, so this will be kind of a walkthrough on some techniques using Photoshop to create simple Snapchat filters. So if we go into the week 3 content area of this class, content, week 3, just make sure we're on that. Down at the bottom here, I have created, let me see, I'll do this as, this looks different for me than it does for you. So we'll go into week 3. So this is the project worksheet that you should take a look at and definitely read through so that you understand really well what you're doing before you even start designing. But this video kind of goes over how to design, basically. So we'll download this template here, this Photoshop GeoFilter template. So it's going into my downloads folder here. It's taking a while. I might have to pause the video here. So this has automatically opened up in Photoshop, but if I went into my downloads folder, I can open it up in Finder, and I can just double click on this. It's a PSD file, and it'll open up in Photoshop. It might automatically open for you as well. So let's see here. I'm trying to move this in, but okay, anyway. Well, this is what the filter looks like. We can see there's a filters layer here that's a group of different things, which is the buffers. So the buffers basically on the top and then on the bottom here. And this is, in this area, we don't want to put any important graphics or text within these areas. So keep these zones clear. And then we do have this barbecue background. It's basically just an example of what your filter might look like with a picture in it. And that's basically what Snapchat is. It's a phone application that you download and that you log into, kind of like Facebook. It's a social media thing where you can choose different filters and different things to add to your video or pictures that you actually take. And then see, here's the sample filters folder. So if we open this up, the Just Chillin' one's on, but we can turn on the Sweet Dreams one if we want. The Huntington Beach one is another example of a geofilter, actually quite detailed. And then this one's the Meatpacking District of New York City, which obviously she's not in New York. The Just Chillin' one does make the most sense. But anyway, we don't really need any of these here except for the buffer. So we can actually delete these before we start our design process. It was just fun to look through and see some examples, but anyway, this is actually what I want my final design to look like, and this is what I have currently, obviously. So this is kind of where I want to end up. I also did do an alternate design that's just a little bit different. I wasn't sure which one I liked better. But I think I'm just going to probably show you guys this one here. So we'll get back into that template that we kind of cleaned up and made blank except for the buffers. So let's save our file. Let's do a file save as. And I'm going to put this in my documents. I'm going to create a new folder here and label it, you know, make sure it's Electronic Design 1, and then create a new folder, make it Snapchat GeoFilter, the name of this folder, because we should have a project folder that's specific to our project. And then we can name this Snapchat GeoFilter final design. So I'm actually gonna, since this is for the Devlin Trail, I'm just gonna put final. So since this is for the Devlin Trail, I want to name it for that, and you can add in little underscores too if you want to, in between words, whatever makes sense to you. Just don't put spaces in file names. You can do camel case, which is the uppercase along with the lowercase to separate out words, or you can put underlines in between your words. So save it out as a Photoshop document in that Snapchat GeoFilter folder in your electronic design 1 folder in your documents. Push save and OK. And then let's see here. Let's go to Window, Workspace, and make it Essentials. Make sure you're on Essentials, just so that you have the same surface as I do. And if your tools are like this, maybe just push this little arrow so that they're like this, because that's how I like mine to be. Okay. So next I kind of want to find these footprints that I've made. What I ended up doing is I just went on to Google, and I made them myself. I wanted them to have kind of a rough looking, I wanted them to be a little bit rough looking. I looked up footprint instead of shoe print, but I ended up, I was considering possibly doing a footprint, but I ended up going with actually these shoe prints here from this file specifically. It's not a high resolution image, but it'll work as something to kind of trace off of. So I can just drag that onto my desktop, click and drag onto my desktop when I find within Google Images. So I can use that file now. My desktop is really dirty. I need to fix that at some point. But okay, so I'm going to bring that file I just found in. So File, Place, Embedded. Navigate to the desktop. Here we go. Here's this file, and then we're going to place that inside. It's kind of small. So when you first bring something in, luckily they allow you to transform it right away, so you can just easily scale it up in size by grabbing the sides and dragging them. And then just push return when you have it to the size that you think you want it to be. And when you brought it in, it did come in as its own layer, which is nice. You can turn that on and off. You can turn these buffers on and off with these eyeballs here. This is the layers panel. So I'm going to create a new layer over the top of this layer by clicking on this little icon here. And if you hover on it, it says create a new layer. So I'm going to grab the brush tool, which is right here. And I'm going to make sure I'm in that new layer that's over the top of the other layer. And I'm going to size my brush down to like probably around 7 or 8 pixels, so I can manually enter it here, or I can use this slider. 7 seems to be, and I want it to be kind of a hard brush, so you can change your brush size here. You can also go into this file here and open up like even more, do some different, deeper dive if you want. Just go through all of these. If you want to look at all the different kinds of brushes, you can. But generally I can find what I'm looking for if I just hit this little thing. Yep, so I want a hard brush, and then now I'm going to do Command plus, just to zoom in. And if I want to change the color of my brush, I can double click this and I can change that fill color. So I want this to be around 62, 0, 100, and 0. So that's the color I'm looking for here. Actually, is that right? I feel like my other color was better. Yeah, maybe we'll just go with this. So if we zoom in, we can begin to kind of create those footprint shapes. And this is really a rudimentary way of doing it. But like I said, I wanted this to have kind of a rough, playful, hand-drawn look. And I'll start with just kind of outlining each of these shapes until I get the final shape. And I will be coloring these in. If I want to color them in, I can actually change the size of my brush to be a little bit bigger so it doesn't take me quite so long to... But I'm going to need that 7-point brush to make the outline on most of these shapes. And as you can see, sometimes your brush is too big, like I can't get in this corner very easily. Luckily, I just barely got away with that. But you can easily size your brush down to make it easier to fill in places on your design. And I will have to bring it back down to 7 or somewhere or thereabouts to be able to continue to draw these finer details. in this footprint. So I'm just going to go through and do this. And I actually have a file already ready, which is actually, I'll show it to you here in just a minute. It's basically in this document. And I used two different colors, a purple and a green. So it's actually this layer here. So let's just say I went through the process of tracing those two foot shapes. So this is the other document that we were working in. So I'm actually just going to copy this over. So if I'm on this layer in this other document, as you can see, it's almost like a browser window tab between these two documents. But I'm going to copy this over because it's already completed. So I would get on that layer, do a Command C, and then tab over to this layer. And then do a Command V. So I've actually brought that in, which is going to save me quite a bit of time. This is the other layer that I started on. I'm just going to go ahead. If you want to delete a layer, you just grab it and delete it. So here I am. I've completed my trace of my footprints, let's just say, and I don't really need this layer anymore, so I'm going to delete that. So if we zoom out by Command 0, that'll zero you out to 100%, so you can see the whole canvas. So we have our, footprints here, so we can just position these near the bottom of the canvas, somewhere around here probably. If I want to size them up, I can do a Command T, and that'll create a transform, which is how you scale things up in size. And you can just grab it by the corner and just bring it up in size, and then just push return. And I actually want two sets of footprints, so I'm actually going to make sure I'm on that layer and do Command C, Command V to get a separate set. So as you can see, I've gotten this other layer here. So I'll just say footprint. If I want to rename a layer, we can just double click on that name in the layers panel and I'm going to say foot, or maybe shoe print lower. Oops. And then I'll rename this one shoe print upper. Okay. And just make sure I got that right. Okay, yeah, those are the lower ones and these are the upper ones. So I'm going to actually move these. This is the move tool. Grab that. I'm going to move it over here, and then I'm going to do a Command T again to size this. I'm going to make them a little bit smaller because it's supposed to be them kind of going off into the distance. And if I want to put a little bit of a tilt on these, I can. I just need to get to that corner area, and eventually this little guy will show up. You just kind of have to search for it a little bit, and then you should be able to find that, and then just push return. I'm going to do actually tilt on this, so Command T, find that little guy and tilt these out, and then just push return to make it stick. Okay, well that's looking pretty good. We've got those in there now. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and bring in another file, basically a landscape picture. So I'm going to do File, Place Embedded. And I am going to bring in, I'm going to navigate to where I know I have this file. It's a JPEG. So I'm going to place embed, file, place embed this. It's kind of small, but it comes in with all ready to be transformed. So I'm just going to grab it by either the corners or these little white boxes all around the edge you can grab. Click and drag it to move it around. Maybe I'll do something like this maybe, and then just push return to make it stick. And as you can see, it was brought in. I want it to actually be below everything, so I'm going to move the layers around. The buffer's open. I'm going to close that up, because this is a group of layers. I'm going to close that up. So now this is on bottom. I can also bring it back on top. So I just move that up. I could bring it on top by doing this, but I actually want it to be below everything, so I can kind of get an idea of what this is actually going to look like. I'm actually going to move over my footprints just a little bit